Good day. My name is Liz Clute, and I am the Director of Emergency Management for Kitsap County. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Disaster Airlift Response Team, and that is a volunteer group that we have here in Kitsap County that we work with in partnership to train and exercise on the air side of emergency response. And so I have some experts here with me today that we're going to talk to and learn a little bit more about the program and an exercise that's coming up September 21st at the Bremerton Airport. So I'm going to turn first to George, and George here is a member of the DART program and also a pilot, and he's going to give us a little bit of history about the DART program and how it originated. So George?
Thanks, Liz. The example that we always use is the Loma Prieta earthquake. 30 years ago in the San Francisco area, we had an earthquake that shook the entire area, but specifically, it dropped 3 bridges that isolated the town of Watsonville, California. When it did that, it cut the lines of transportation, and the entire city down there was cut off from any supply delivery. FEMA flew a couple of airplanes in, but those airplanes contained doctors, they contained nurses, they contained structural engineers, but not much in the way of supplies. There was an ad hoc effort developed where they got pilots from 4 different airports around Watsonville, and using 300 small airplanes, the local pilots flew over 500 flights, and they delivered about 500,000 pounds of supplies into the town of Watsonville, California. Here in Puget Sound, we're overdue for a large earthquake.
Yes, we are.
And it's going to happen soon in geological terms. It could be tomorrow, it could be in 100 years, but we're sitting on the subduction zone, and we know it's going to happen. So we look around at the different communities that could be affected. Kitsap County is a big one because we've got 4 ways that we can access this community. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge, the Hood Canal Bridge, Highway 3, and then the ferry systems. And if those are impacted by a large enough earthquake, suddenly we're going to be without supplies here. One way that we can address that is to bring supplies in by air, much as they did back in Watsonville. So what we've done is we've gone out to all the pilots in the state and ask them if they would be willing to entertain a request for help. If they're not affected by the earthquake, perhaps they can assist those people that are.
So I just want to follow up on that a little bit. So you're actually referring to private pilots and private planes. These aren't government assets, is that correct?
Absolutely. These are all private airplanes. They are 2 or 4 or possibly 6-seat airplanes. They're all owned by private individuals. These are pilots that like to go off and fly. We fly for pleasure, we fly for transportation, we fly sometimes for business, but basically it's small airplanes flying around Washington. Anyway, we had an exercise earlier this year where we took supplies from Walla Walla and flew them into Renton. We can go across the state in about 2 hours and bring supplies from places that are not affected by an earthquake into places that are affected.
Well, for me as the county emergency manager and for the public out there, this is very exciting. I know I was an emergency manager in the Caribbean, and a couple of years ago there was some pretty big hurricanes that hit the area, Category 5 hurricanes. And I had the opportunity to actually work with private pilots from Europe and from along the eastern seaboard, as well as some private ships that came in, some private yachts to bring in relief supplies. And it worked very well. And I think it's an incredible opportunity that we have here in Kitsap County to be able to do something similar. So we're very appreciative of the DART members. But one of the things that we found in the air relief that we did in the Caribbean was that one of the issues that was very critical was communication. And so we have with us here today from the Department of Emergency Management, the head of what's called CARS, which is our Kitsap Auxiliary Radio System. So I'm going to turn to Doug and have you introduce yourself. And can you tell the public a little bit about what is CARS and how you're going to function in the exercise?
So CARS is a very talented group of amateur radio operators who, and others as well, who have tremendous capabilities to communicate in the event that we have a failure of communications, which we anticipate that happening during a catastrophic event like an earthquake. And many of the hurricanes that have occurred that has taken down all of the communications, and so my folks, the CARS folks, have the ability to communicate over long distances with numerous different methods of communication. So one of the things we want to do for this exercise is to also test our capabilities in that area, so that when the planes fly in and then fly over to Jefferson or Clallam County, we can communicate that information to them, that let them know that they're coming, and at the same time, when the planes arrive, have the communications come back to us to let us know that that they had arrived. So it's just a way to test our abilities during a catastrophic event like an earthquake. So.
And it's always a good idea to be testing these capabilities before the real event happens. Right?
Yeah, and we test. This is by far not the only time we'll test our capabilities. We do it 4 times a year, and then we do weekly drills also, and nets, we call them, where people check in. And so it's a very effective way. And they, like I say, they can talk through satellites, they can talk through HF means, they can talk VHF and internet capable also. So it's just a really good backup communication system, and so we want to be ready with our about 90 volunteers in the event that we have a problem with communications, to be able to back up our disaster operations. So.
That's terrific. And CARS is a program that if any member of the public was a licensed ham radio operator, they could contact Department of Emergency Management and yourself and become a member of that program.
Yeah, and actually we're pretty much all inclusive. It's not just amateur radio operators. We have mostly amateur radio operators, but if someone's they have an organization called REACT that's for citizens band radio, that we accept those members. They have a GMRS program, which is basically using radio repeaters that also we would entertain them joining us as well. So it's not just amateur radio operators, although right now that's primarily what we have.
Okay, well, great. Well, one of the important pieces of this whole exercise is actually a food drive. So like you mentioned, George, in Walla Walla, that there is a food drive that's going on. And last year it was focused on Clallam County. This year it's focused on Jefferson County. And next year it'll be actually focused on Kitsap County. So the way it works is that there's a food drive in several counties. We all collect the resources, and DART coordinates, it's their food drive. And then those are delivered as relief supplies to the target jurisdiction, and then donated to the food banks and other nonprofits within the jurisdiction. So the food drive is actually just started here in Kitsap County, and you can go to Fred Meyer's in Bremerton or Port Orchard, and you can this is for the public, so you can help us in this exercise by actually helping us get the resources that we need to simulate what we would do in an actual disaster. So if you go to Fred Meyer's, you can either pick some things up in the store and go up to the cash register and let them know that you're purchasing these for the KC DART relief and food drive exercise, or you can also go online, and where you put in your contact information, you can put KC DART, and then whatever you purchase online will then be provided to us and the DART program to be able to actually have resources that we will physically load onto the plane or the planes. There'll be a number of planes, and then send those off to Jefferson County. There's another exercise that we're doing as a part 2 to this exercise, which are some relief supplies that Jefferson, Clallam, and Kitsap County we're buying for ourselves. And these actually are some of the supplies that we will have for the public in an actual disaster. So things like mosquito repellent and sunscreen. I mean, when you lose the roof of your house and you still have the sun shining, you have to make sure that you're prepared. And in the event that you can't get to your emergency supplies, we won't have a lot, but we'll have enough to try to help the public as we can. So we'll be taking those supplies and putting them on a plane for Clallam County and a plane for Jefferson County and flying those out as a relief exercise. So it's really going to actually be a lot of fun, but we're also seriously testing our procedures, our forms, our protocols, and our communications to make sure that what we're doing will work when we have that catastrophic event. So of course, along with that, one of the most important functions is the logistics side, and that's where you receive the supplies. In the case of a large emergency, they'd be coming from FEMA. From the FEMA, they'd be going to the state out there at the Bremerton Airport, and then transitioning over to our storage and packaging area for then loading onto the planes. And we have to be very careful, of course, that the pilots know how much their plane can carry, and we package them in a fashion so that they can be balanced. So one of the resources that we use to do that here in Kitsap County is called our CERT program. It's the Community Emergency Response Team. And they do things like help us with perimeter security, helping with traffic control, helping with recovery of the airport, but then also we've asked them to be responsible for receiving packaging, repackaging, labeling, doing the manifests, and getting those two coordinated with the pilots. So we have with us here today Ken Hewlett, and he is the manager of the CERT program here in Kitsap County. So Ken, can you fill out the information a little bit more on the actions you guys would actually take and how you activate and how you're going to maybe get the airport up and running so that we can do this?
I don't know if I can elaborate much more than what you already put out, but basically what we're going to be doing, either with the exercise or with an actual event, is assisting wherever we're needed to provide the manpower to package and process the boxes of supplies, helping them get out to the planes, helping the planes, the pilots load them on the planes, and generally just being available to help out wherever we're needed at that site, including moving major supplies around the airport to where they need to be staged, and assisting with the inventory. And then once the supplies come in, we would be tasked with helping inventory the supplies coming in, and then helping get them out to distribution points for the public.
And then what is Air Dart?
Air Dart,
or Air CERT, I mean, excuse me.
Air CERT, yes. Air CERT is an extension of the CERT program. The CERT program now is set to assist the public. We train people to take care of themselves, their home, and then their neighborhood, and then if necessary they can be called out to help their communities in a disaster or emergency. With the Air CERT program, CERT members receive more extensive training for airport response, such as air safety, airport safety, ramp management, and things like that that they need to have to provide a safe environment both for themselves and for the pilots and other personnel at the airport.
So what does that mean? You kind of help get the airport up and running and getting ready to
It will be up to the airport
planes?
manager how much they can do, but it's basically we can help do the foreign object debris walk on the airport, make sure that the airport runway is clear and that it can receive air traffic. We can help with administrative matters with the airport. Part of the Air CERT may involve communication, but again, it's a very new program. It's been fielded out to a couple different cities that we're aware of, and we're building on that program with in conjunction with the airport manager.
So we're kind of leading the development of this.
We
One of the communities that's leading it for this, for the state?
We appear to be the pilot program for the state right now, and we hope that they take our information and we'll field it out to the rest of the CERT programs within the state.
Well, that's cool. So when it comes to actual packaging and moving of the supplies, what is let's say I drove up with a van and put a bunch of stuff out for you. What would you do with it?
We're going to inventory, say we get 10 cans of peaches. Okay, we have 10 cans of peaches, but we're going to divide that up, put it in boxes, weigh the boxes, label the boxes with their contents. It may not say 10 cans of peaches, 20 cans of this, and 5 packages of macaroni, but it's going to say food items. And then we're going to weigh it. We're going to inventory those boxes and label them for transport so that we know where they're going when we create a manifest for the pilots. Each box will be labeled with a number. We can track it with that tracking number wherever its final destination is.
So it's kind of like FedEx or UPS, where you put a label on it and then that gets delivered and they take the label and you can match them up.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
And then working with the communication side, the receiving airports will know what they're expecting to receive also.
So they can be prepared and have people on their end to collect the
That's right.
resources. Okay, that's great. So coming back to George and the DART pilots, as this becomes a part of community and county emergency management, I can see that there's other ways that we could probably utilize DART. Like if we had a wildfire going on out in an area that maybe had a lake, like Tahuya or Kitsap Lake. Do you also work with float pilots?
Out of the 170 pilots we've got, I think we've got about 10 pilots that have float planes. So we could, and most of the float planes are amphibious. They've got both floats and a set of wheels that comes out. They can land on a runway, or they can take off and then land on a lake somewhere. So there are a lot of things that we can do with the airplanes. We can deliver supplies in, we can deliver personnel in, and we can bring them into smaller places than large airplanes can get into. A large airplane might require 5,000 feet of runway. Our airplanes can land in 1,000 feet. So even if the runway is broken up, if there is a section of it that's usable, we can still get in there. We could use these airplanes for repeaters, for communication repeaters up high. We can use them for reconnaissance, for looking up and down roads to find out what's open and what's not.
So the damage assessment.
Damage assessment, there's all kinds of uses for these small airplanes. What we're trying to do right now is establish the list, find the number of people that we can call on uses, and once we've got this list established, I think it's kind of, if you build it, they will come. Only in this case, once we've got the asset, and this is a remarkably agile and effective asset, once we have this asset, we will find a number of ways that it can be used in an emergency.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is if there was an emergency in eastern Washington or down in Vancouver, Washington, and maybe we needed some ham folks or some of our CERT folks to go down and supplement another emergency, that might be a good way to utilize it.
And quickly get them from one part of the state to another. We often think that in Jefferson County, if you've got a community that's isolated, because there are a lot of little islands, or island county, places that become isolated, that we could deliver supplies by water. But if Seattle is also affected, suddenly you've got bigger problems elsewhere. But if we have a large subduction earthquake, chances are Walla Walla is going to be pretty unaffected. It's quite a ways away. But we can be there in a small airplane in 2 hours. So we can bring supplies, people, equipment from places that are not affected into these places that are.
Okay, that's very interesting. It seems like a great asset and a great resource for Kitsap County in preparing for a less than Cascadia event or a Cascadia level event. So Doug, do we have a relationship with the state emergency management, state aviation? How does that work?
We have a relationship with the communication side of the state emergency management, and we have our Emergency Operations Center radio room, which has a suite of radios, and we're able to communicate with the State Office of Emergency Management, as well as the other emergency operations centers in our surrounding counties. And so if we were, again, in a disaster situation, needed to reach out to other counties for assistance, maybe we're looking for additional DART pilots, we would be able to do that. We could put their, in fact, we practice that. We send a request down to the state periodically when we do our exercises, and simulating a need for particular supplies and equipment, and it goes down to the state for them to fill that resource as if it was an actual event, and that's what we would do if we had an event.
And that's a resource request.
That's a resource request, and so you might be asking for more fire engines, dump trucks, backhoes. You put a resource request together, and if the normal communications is down, cell phones and phone lines are down, we would still be able to communicate those requests via amateur radio, and we practice that, and we practice that with the State Office of Emergency Management, and works very well.
So through your ham network and the CARS network during an emergency, you could actually get in touch with other communities to see if they have relief supplies that they need to send in or they want to send in, and then we could utilize DART potentially to go pick those up and bring them out here.
That's correct, yeah. If somebody, or the opposite, if somebody had a very pressing need for supplies or medical staff, perhaps, you know, that they needed, and they could relay that through the radio system, and we could then communicate with the DART folks to see about getting an airlift for medical supplies or anything else for that matter. So.
Okay. So Ken, I wanted to give you the opportunity to just talk a little bit about CERT and maybe what the opportunities are for the public to become involved in the community emergency response, both for within their own community, but also to support our DART operations.
As the name implies, CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, it means that we receive training for we're an all-hazard organization, meaning we receive training to help with minor urban search and rescue, disaster medical issues, disaster psychology, and various other issues that could be very helpful to the community in case of emergency.
Securing utilities and things
working
like
with
that.
utilities and fire suppression and things like that, yeah. So we train our people to be prepared to take care of themselves first. We can't take care of anybody else if we're incapacitated. So we want to take care of ourselves first, make sure our families are okay before we go out for anywhere. We're a volunteer organization, so nobody's required to do anything. It's strictly up to the individual if they feel they can do it safely, that they can take care of themselves, their family, and their neighborhood. After that, if the emergency requires it, and they get called by emergency management or myself to approve an activation, then we'd go out into the community to assist with the community first responders, however they might need us, as doing search and rescue, doing manning information stations, anything that they might need would be what we would go for.
Well, what if I wanted to become involved in that? How would I go about participating? And I'm assuming it'd be similar to for the DART.
Right.
You know, George would be the contact for DART, and you would be the contact for CERT, and Doug would be the contact for CARS. So if I wanted to sign up to take training from CERT, how would I do that?
Classes are offered regularly throughout the year through Department of Emergency Management sponsorship. And if you wish to take a class, you need to check with the Emergency Management Department or Department of Emergency Management website. The classes are listed on the website, and you sign up and then attend. It's a 9-week session or 9 session. We do the sessions in about 7 weeks, but you have to sign up. You have to register with us and attend the classes. At the end of the classes, everybody graduates at the same level. And with the same experience, with the same training.
Okay. And George, if someone wanted to become part of the DART program, how would they do that?
If there were a pilot that had access to an airplane, they would simply send me an email. I would send them a Google form. They fill out the form. When they hit send on that form, they're on our list.
What if I don't have a plane, which I don't, but I wanted to participate because I see this as a great opportunity to serve my community?
If you wanted to become part of the Kitsap County DART and work on the ground, come out to the airport, that kind of thing, we have a website that they can contact and apply on. We can contact Diane, and she will fold them in, find places for them to participate out at the airport, whether it's organizing airplanes, marshaling airplanes, loading airplanes, or handling the paperwork or handling the supplies that come in.
Okay, and so for the public, if you're interested in getting involved in the DART program, you can contact the Department of Emergency Management, and we're happy to refer you to the leadership of the DART program. Also, if you'd like to become a member of the CARS, the Kitsap Auxiliary Radio System, you can contact the department and we can provide you that information. So I want to remind you that we do have the food drive going on. You can go either to the Bremerton or to the Port Orchard Fred Meyers, and just tell the folks at the cash register what you're bringing up, and that is for the Kitsap County DART airlift exercise, the food drive. And or you could also go online to Fred Meyer, where you purchase groceries, and for the contact information, put in KC DART, and then the supplies that you procure will become a part of the exercise and be donated eventually to the food bank and other nonprofits in Jefferson County. So I want to thank you for your time today and thank the panel for joining me here with your excellent programs. And say to the public, the exercise is on the 21st of September. It'll be at the Bremerton Airport. It's going to be very exciting, and we're really looking forward to it. And thank you for listening. Have a good day.